Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another Top Cut breakdown video. Haven't done one of these in a few weeks, but today we're going to talk about what went on over the course of the weekend at PPG Arizona. Considering the state of the world, this is one of the bigger IRL events and the first one of 2021, so it's going to be pretty cool to look at. So if you guys are new here, definitely subscribe, hit that bell so you miss a video. And if you guys are looking to compete in events like this that are coming up, make sure to go down in the description, check out the Patreon where you can find a lot of competitive content while also supporting the channel. Now, that being said, we'll get into the Top Cut breakdown. So to be honest, I was a little bit hesitant of doing this video at first because it is another Set 11 tournament. We've done a lot of talking about Set 11. We've also really gotten into the meat of Set 12 content, doing deck profiles and talking about the different strategies coming out in that set. So I was curious if you guys were even interested in me talking about this Set 11 tournament, but I asked you guys on Facebook. The wide majority of you guys still wanted to see a Top Cut breakdown for this, and I'm more than happy to do it. I always love talking about the meta. I love talking about Dragon Ball Super in general. So if I get a chance to do it in a more competitive light, I'm super happy to do it. So we'll get it done here. Top 8 breakdown of PPG Arizona. There were 2 Dark Broly, 2 Bulma, one of which was a red-green variant. The other one was a Gogeta BR variant, which actually ended up taking this event. 2 Green Gotenks, 1 Cell Surge featuring Frieza Zeno, much more of like an aggro archetype. We've seen this a few times before. And the final deck was Reboot Gohan. This is actually what also made it to the finals, this 1X Reboot Gohan. Alright, so getting into it, we got to start with Bulma because Bulma is the deck that went to go win the event. But before we get into the winning strategy, let's talk a little bit about red-green Bulma. There's a lot of interesting stuff to look at here when it comes to multicolor. It's so funny actually that it's almost been a whole year since multicolor's been overly relevant in the Dragon Ball Super card game. Like, we've seen Invoker every now and again, right? Like, it did a lot of stuff in Set 10, did some things in Set 11, but I mean, I wouldn't even look at that as a multicolor deck. Obviously it's multicolor, but it's more so just the archetype contained within the deck that makes it so good. Multicolor in a more generic sense hasn't really done too much since last February, since Tournament of Power era, right? So to see a multicolor deck come back and do some unique things is really, really cool. Now, just talking about Bulma generically as a leader, she offers a ton of draw power, right? So on her unawakened side, she draws 1. On her back side, she draws 2 per turn. The main downside to Bulma, even though it seems crazy she draws so much, is that you really don't want to let attacks get to the combo step, because when they do, Bulma is smaller than your average leader, so she'll have to combo more cards to defend out of those bigger attacks, right? So that's where you really want to, abuse her ability that she gives all Saiyans and Earthlings blockers. So moving into the red-green aspect of things, of course, SSB Gogeta Resonant Explosion is one of the linchpins of a, more generic red-green strategy. Bulma generating so many cards, Arrival is not really even a cost for her. But besides that, you're playing Nappa Super Combo, where you combo that guy, you arrive something like Gogeta here, you play Nappa, he becomes a free blocker you just generated, so you lost virtually no card advantage, and you play Gogeta for 1. And this battle interruption, this battle popping skill here that we have on this Arrival here, it's something that most other decks in the meta don't have right now, because that is something very, very exclusive to Arrival. Back in the day, we had Shugesh Kid Goku, which is a really old broken combo, basically allows you to kill anything during combat. If you didn't play the game back then, you might not know what I'm talking about, but it is somewhat similar to what Gogeta does here. Now, of course, Gogeta has an energy cap, so you can only pop something 4 or less, but my main point in saying this is that this deck, red green in general, or multicolor in general, depending on what color combination you're playing, has this form of battle interruption that many other decks don't have. Like, the main forms of interruption right now in the meta are easily Godsling Technique Trunks and Frieza Charismatic Villain, which are both counter plays. They respond directly to the play of something. But when you have a deck like Red Green Bulma, you have this added element to the game where you have to worry about battle interruption. And if you weren't playing in the past year or so, you might not really be aware of that. So there's a big surprise factor here in terms of this deck. But I think in Bulma, it just makes perfect sense, because again, that Nappa synergy where it comes in, produces a free blocker, and then playing Gogeta for 1, producing a 20k double striker for 1 obviously is a great rate. But besides that, if you don't want to be super aggressive with your opponent, maybe you're playing a little bit more of a stall tactic depending on the matchup, you arrive out Gogeta. He's a 20k blocker that, again, you generated for virtually no card advantage and 1 energy. It's just great synergy with Bulma. Bulma is one that, doesn't top super consistently, but when you do, I think it's a player that has dedicated a lot of time to it and really knows what they want their strategy to do. Likewise, moving on, we'll talk about the winner of the event. We're going over to Gogeta Bulma. Now, this is a build that we've seen, I think, from at least what I've covered on the channel, This would be the third top cut appearance of Bulma Gogeta, if I'm remembering correctly. Now, what's really cool about this is the Gogeta engine isn't necessarily tied to its own Gogeta leader, which is very, very nice. I'm on record saying that at least from set 11 prior or DB6 prior, that Gogeta leader is pretty lackluster, but it's so cool to see Bulma take advantage of this engine, and it really makes a lot of sense. Same synergy I mentioned with Resonant Explosion. The ability to leave up this Gogeta as a 35k blocker that can't be KO'd is an awesome synergy, especially when you do want to play a bit more of a style game. Bulma does not have to attack to generate any form of advantage, at least through the leader and through certain main deck cards that you play. So you can just totally leave up Gogeta in active mode, stall your opponent, wear their resources. Every single time they attack, Gogeta auto trigger, pop something, or reduce the leader to, you know, basically make the damage 0. Or you can just be super aggressive. You can be super fast. You can swing with your Gogeta every turn, wear them down, and you're going to have a really good time actually finding your strategies of Universe 7, which is another problem with the actual Gogeta leader where you can't find that card. Now, of course, I did do a deck profile talking about, you know, pure Gogeta in set 12, so check that out if you want to see it. Gets a ton better. But again, this is a set 11 tournament, so we're talking about this in more of the aspect of set 11. Going into set 12, though, I think Bulma still will prove to be very, very strong. I think Red-Green can do some stuff. Again, because of that battle interruption, it's a unique form of gameplay. I think Gogeta gets a lot better in set 12, so you can certainly play that with Bulma if you wish. Definitely add the Piccolo Unison. That could work out very, very well. I also think that just Bulma Red Good Stuff can do a lot of good things as well. I do have a deck profile here on the channel if you want to see what something like, you know, generic Red Bulma Good Stuff looks like. I think all three of those variants can definitely be solid. Bulma generates a ton of advantage, gets a lot of really easy blockers into play that just make dealing with your board a headache for your opponent. So I think Bulma's really good. Very, very cool to see that's one here. Next up, we'll talk about Reboot Gohan, because this is what Bulma had to face in the finals. And the other reason I wanted to talk about it next is because this was such a different build of Reboot Gohan. This is actually a much, much slower build, like jamming 4 Rebrians, playing Roshi to go with your Dormant Potential Unleashed, playing some bigger drops like Kakunsa Beastly Maiden, which, you know, albeit is a 2-drop on defense if your leader's green, but we don't usually see cards like that in the Reboot Gohan builds. Like, this build actually didn't even play 8 1-drop double strikers. I think the 8 1-drop double strikers for green Reboot Gohan is such a staple that we've seen, at least in like the decks that want to win like turn 2, right? So this was a much slower version of Reboot Gohan. It was quite interesting to see. I don't know if this was something this player tailored specifically for this event. Maybe they were like making a meta call, maybe they're making a read on the room, or if there's just something that the player brewed and really liked. I don't know what the case was exactly with that, but that just kind of leads me to talk about what's going to happen with this leader and this strategy come set 12. We know that Reboot Gohan is getting the ban hammer for best of 1 tournaments. Now, these PPG circuit events, these are best of 3, so Reboot Gohan is still going to be live. And I actually want to bring up a point that I actually heard Aspira make on his channel. If you haven't seen his channel, he makes some great content. Go check him out. He rose a great point that actually had me thinking. If Reboot Gohan was deemed ban worthy for best of 1, that also generally means that if you play against Reboot Gohan in a best of 3, you're most likely going to lose that game 1, just because of how inherently powerful Reboot Gohan is alleged to be before side decking, right? At least that's the logic of banning it for best of 1 versus best of 3. So, but overall, I mean, the fact that the player played a slower version of Reboot Gohan, very innovative, very cool to see. We'll see if this keeps up in set 12. Next up, guys, talking about Dark Broly. This is a deck that I think is just gaining more popularity week after week after week. In the beginning of, you know, set 11, I talked a lot about how this is a deck that takes a lot of proper sequencing. Honestly, you got to dedicate a lot of time to play it correctly, because any misplays, any mismanagement of your drop area, any mismanagement of your sequencing, and you can very easily lose the game. But now this deck has been out for a few months, and DB6 has bolstered it quite effectively. It's no wonder to me that people are picking it up more. They've had more time to play around with it. Dark Broly is looking to be a very strong pick in set 12 as well. So I think, granted that, you know, players have had more time to get accustomed to it, figure the deck out, realize what the deck truly aims to do, it's a very flexible deck. Yes, I would probably, you know, consider this more of an aggro deck, because you're spamming free 30k attackers to just swing face with, but you have such like a good value defense with the leader's activate battle, basically being able to combo with any of your battle cards in rest mode, that you actually can edge out a lot of the aggro decks. You know, they just can't they can't limit your hand size by just putting on attack after attack after attack, because you're generating free battle cards which can then be comboed with in rest mode. I mean, that's just one of the reasons Dark Broly I think is going to continue to do a lot of things come set 12. So I'm pretty excited to see it. And you know, cool thing that Dark Broly is seeing a lot more play, because I like that decks like this that reward players for playing well. I like when decks like this are popular because it shows like a very, very skill intensive meta. But one of the weird things about one of the Broly builds actually that I've never seen before, it was actually main decking this Mira engine. So Mira Arcane Overflow and Ultimate Transformation Mira. Again, I'd never seen this in a Broly build before. I want to give them a quick read. So choose one Toa card in your warp, place it under this card, then choose one card in your hand and discard it. Choose one Mira with energy cost of 6 in your deck, play on top of this card, then shuffle your deck. Auto when this card's played, burst 3, draw 2 cards. So as far as I know, you have to hard cast this thing for 3, so I'm assuming this Broly build was aiming to do that. So let's give a quick look at Ultimate Transformation Mira. So auto when this card's played, choose up to one card in your opponent's hand and send it to the warp, and then activate battle once per turn. Choose one of your black battle cards with 30k power and place it in the owner's drop area, then choose one of your opponent's battle cards and send it to the warp. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. I think paying 3 for this Mira is quite a bit in Dark Broly, where you don't have really any energy manipulation, but I do get the point here. I mean, much like the one drop Toa, where you get to sacrifice your 30ks and pick up different 30ks from the drop area, this one basically says sacrifice your 30ks to then pop your opponent's battle card that's attacking. Again, it is activate battle, so you can do that during your opponent's turn. And that actually goes with what I was saying about Red Green Bulma, where you actually have battle interruption. I guess it's a pretty cool way to play Dark Broly. I'm actually kind of interested in trying this out now. I mean, I think 3 energy is a lot, and when you're up against like Charismatic Villain and Godsling Trunks, this is not going to be the most reliable engine, but maybe this is actually a really good thing in like Black Mirror matches. This is really, really cool to see. I'm glad that one of the players was doing well with this. Next up, guys, Gotenks. I feel like I've said all there is to say about Gotenks in the set 11 meta. I think the more interesting thing to look at is how Gotenks may stack up in the set 12 environment. I really think Gotenks is still very, very playable in set 12. I think one of the biggest downfalls of Gotenks is how linear it is and how players have kind of, you know, figured out what the deck's able to do after just playing it time and time again and playing against it time and time again. But I think it's still got one of the strongest battle cards in the game. You know, Grim Reaper of Justice is one of the strongest, you know, quote unquote 2-drops in the game. It's funny how people kind of compared Raider's Warcry as a 2-drop as well. You can definitely look at Grim Reaper as a 2-drop. It's got to be one of the strongest battle cards in the game. Excellent recursion, draw power, removal, relatively easy to play onto the field. I think Gotenks is going to have a relatively good time in set 12 as well. Again, not going to be one of the most dominant decks, but it's going to be a deck that you can play and consistently get into top cut if you know your matchups and if you know how to navigate the meta. And next up, guys, the final deck we're talking about today, we're talking about Cell Surge, and this is much more of an aggro build of Cell Surge. So I got to shout out Brandon Abarca, one of the friends of the channel and of the team. This is his second outing with this deck. We actually have his deck profile from when he won an event with this deck. I believe it was one of the online webcam events, so go check that out if you want to see it. But yeah, this is much more of an aggro Cell build where you're kind of leaning into the Parasitic Dragon Ball to cycle through your Friezas. So generally what you do is you'll KO a battle card, play Surprise Attack Frieza, swing with that for a 15k crit, then you can use your Parasitic Dragon Ball to get into Frieza Dark Infestation. So you're kind of being aggressive in that way with a lot of crit, a little bit of double strike, but you're also able to hand control. You play your rebrands, Frieza Dark Infestation itself picks a card out of your opponent's hand, so it's kind of like Red Broly in a sense where you're just like wearing them down, but at the same time, you know, you're taking their hand away. But this is a more permanent form of hand control than Red Broly is. And that also leads me to say, no Red Broly, no Vegex in this top cut. Again, it was on the smaller size of events, so take that as you will. It was not the biggest sample size to pull from in terms of looking at like the meta as a whole, but no Red Broly, no Vegex, definitely very, very interesting. And that was the reason I kind of wanted to cover this, was because there were more interesting decks in the top cut than just, you know, your average Vegex and your Red Broly that people don't really like to see. So anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.